Welcome to another edition of Driven to Lead. I'm your host, Wayne Brannon. In this program, we explore the real stories from key executives to find the leadership lessons that drove their success, whether in good times or bad. We got a great program for you today, so let's make it happen. Well, great pleasure today to have with us Uday Deshpande, the CEO and CTO of D&V Electronics USA out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Uday has a great background that he's going to talk with us about today. He's a PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Kentucky. And in fact, in 2022, Uday was inducted into the University of Kentucky College of Engineering Hall of Distinction. Great honor, and 30 years of experience bringing electromachine and electromechanical systems technology and solutions to all different types of industry, everything from cars to aircraft carriers, all sorts of industrial applications, working at Ingersoll Rand, General Atomics, Fisker Automotive, Maxwell Technologies, Black & Decker. Currently, as the CEO and CTO of DV Electronics, as I mentioned, he's working with test equipment and testing electrification systems and componentry. Uday, great pleasure to have you on the program. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Wayne. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. I appreciate connecting and getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a great conversation. I think the audience will appreciate it. So the first thing I think we should do is talk about testing equipment in this, electromechanical, electronics area. Not too many of us understand what needs to be done to, measure and test and validate all of this stuff before we use it or before it's in, in the products and services that, come to us. So would you tell us about emulator testing versus simulator testing? I think it'd be great for us to start there so we get a fundamental understanding, if you would, please.
Yeah, Wayne, but let me maybe take a couple of steps back and set the stage, right? So testing is very much an integral part of the product development continuum, if you think about it that way, right? So you design a product, and then before you sell it, you want to make sure that the product is doing what it's supposed to do, right? And what it needs to do, and it meets the requirements of ultimately the market and the customers, right? So testing is not really a standalone, but it's very much an integrated part of the entire product development continuum. Now, if you start taking products, you take a very simple product, a pair of scissors, right? You would think that a simple product should not be tested, but you need to make sure that it's tested to the point where it says that, yep, the first time you snip, it shouldn't break apart, right? Now you've decided that it should last for 1,000 snips. Then how do you ensure that it can actually do that? So you test snipping. Another one, early on in my career, we used to spend a lot of time actually testing that the power cords connected to home appliances actually last. If you think an iron, for example, the cord is wrapped around, pulled, left pulling, gets caught, it shouldn't break apart the first time, right? So even something as simple as a power cord needs to be tested to make sure that it works, right? So now you move from there to, let's say, more complex systems, right? And let's take automobiles, since one, that's what I'm working on, two, that's everybody understands automobiles, right? And so you buy a car, you want to make sure that it works, so it doesn't break down the first time it sells. And you being an automotive veteran, you understand the need to ensure that the products that you sell satisfy the customers, right? You don't want them coming back complaining about things not working, right? So testing becomes extremely crucial, right? And the more complex the system, the more you need to make sure you test it. Now, you take that and testing, let's say you put the whole thing together, you put the whole car together, now you start testing it. Something breaks. You've got no idea what actually broke, or maybe you know what broke, but you have no idea why it broke and what was the reason it broke. So part A might break, but the reason part A broke might be part D, right? And if you now have to test to figure out, oh, it's part D, then you fix the problem, then you put it back to verify that the fix works. It's a very complicated, time-consuming process, right? So in the testing world, what's done is you want to test as early as you can so that you catch the problems at the components. So if you just tested part D and you found the problem with part D, you're just fixing part D. You're not taking apart the whole car to test it, right? So when you start looking at it from this perspective, then how do you test the components, right? And this is where simulation, emulation, etc., start coming into play. Okay, so simulation, my quick definition of simulation is everything is virtual. It's a model, it's virtual. You probably have no real anything. You're mimicking the behavior of the components in a computer model, and you're studying whether or not the computer model behaves like it does. Emulation is a little bit beyond that, in that you try to mimic the behavior in real time. So there is an element of computer modeling, but there is also an element of a real component. Right? And that's the primary difference between a simulation and emulation, right? So for example, a 1 second operation in real time might take 1 hour in a simulation, but will take 1 second in emulation. So it's a real world implementation of the behavior.
So you have to have the ability to monitor and measure and understand in real time when you're doing emulation testing.
Yes, and the model that you operate needs to operate in a way that it mimics the real life behavior. So
Yeah,
if it's
exactly.
1 second, then it runs in 1 second.
Yeah. So you could say that it's, while, simulation has its own challenges and complexities, emulation has a lot more rigor because of the control of the actual componentry and the relationships of various components that you have to have set up and be able to assess during a test environment. Now, that's a great explanation. Thanks for that. So when you do this, are you doing the work for the companies you serve and their products, or are they buying equipment from you, or is it some combination of both? Talk to us about that. How's that work?
It combination of both really is where it boils down to. Although if I think in terms of the nature of the business, it's more us selling them equipment, right? And helping them use the equipment, make sure that their engineers are trained and so on, right? Now, let me add a little bit more to emulation, right? So this is a
Okay.
little bit more of what we do. So emulation has got two elements, right? So the one that has been historically known is what they call hardware in the loop, where the actual hardware, typically a controller, that's the real hardware is used. Models are run on in a real-time computer, and you can test the development and operation of this controller software with the real signals, right? So you're sensing signals and how the code is executed in the actual processor and so on, right? What we do is we take that to a power level, and what we sell as emulators, also called power hardware in the loop, right? So which means now when you're testing a component, and specifically, let's say an inverter that is driving the motor in the electric vehicle, that inverter is tested using an emulator that emulates the behavior of the motor. So this is real-time behavior that's emulated. The inverter now can be tested at the right rated voltage, the rated currents, the rated power, and so on. So what it does for a car company is I can test this inverter as if it's being used at the real voltages and powers in a lab, right? So I can find my component problems right off the bat. Then once it goes into the next level of testing all the way to the car, I've already hopefully verified maybe 90 to 95% of the functionality of the inverter is
Right.
so you reduce the amount of testing that you have to do downstream. If you think in terms of the automotive behavior, if you can test most of it in the lab, then the number of cars that maybe you need to run on a proving ground, or the number of cars that you need to have running in the field, can be reduced, so that you don't require the same, and it helps to speed up time to market. It helps up build the confidence in the product.
Right.
And it becomes more and more critical as the products become more complex and more integrated.
And it seems to me, I mean, I never really thought about this before because this isn't my area of expertise, but you have a whole strategy then that needs to be developed, which could take various paths. The strategy of testing and validating, verifying. You could do individuals first, then put them together in different stages. So does D&V Electronics, your company, do you do that strategy development as well, or does that come from usually the manufacturers and the development engineers themselves, or is it some combination?
I'd say combination, but the combination is not necessarily in a co-development mode, right? So all of us, we've had our past life working, so we understand the customer. right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
until DNV, most of my career was sitting on the other side of the table, right? I'd be
right,
buying this equipment, right? So
right.
yes, I know what my product needs from a validation perspective.
Hmm.
Then we work with the experts like the test equipment vendors to identify what is the best tool to ensure that we can get to that validation, right?
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
a lot of the folks in DL, we bring that expertise into the mix so that when we develop our solutions and products and solutions, we have a idea of what the market and customers need. And this is refined as we work with our customers, right? So customers might have some unique requirements based on what they want to do differently for their product. So we work with them, and in the course of that, you kind of continue to evolve the entire process. So the equipment ultimately becomes the framework on which you implement these strategies, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It makes perfect sense. So let's turn the conversation to why in the world did you end up in this particular arena of electric machine and electronics testing? So if I remember correctly, you grew up in India, you did your undergraduate work there,
Yeah.
and I mean, obviously, you had an interest in electrical engineering. If as you were kind of going down that path pretty early, did you ever imagine you'd be doing what you're doing right now, kind of being kind of more of a global executive, working in a very specific area of electrical engineering like you are?
Honestly, no.
Yeah.
Well, I'll share the story. When we were in eighth grade, we had a school field trip to a hydroelectric power plant, right? And I
Mhm.
saw one of those big generators, right? I mean, big that you could walk through.
Right.
That was sort of
Right.
sparked my interest. I said, this is really cool, right? And that's what sort of drove me to electrical engineering. And many places today they don't really, as a university department, they may not distinguish between electrical and electronics, right?
Hmm.
Get clubbed into one. I was always very keen on electrical, which means the power level,
Right.
stuff, right? And so that's what I was able to get into my undergraduate college, and then focus on electrical engineering. And when I came here for my graduate studies, I that was the field. I ended up doing a lot more electric machines, and then went to work in this field. And what I found is that uh, electric machines, at the end of the day, is part of a system, right? And that's why I claim to be more of an electromechanical systems person rather than purely an electric machine or electrical engineer.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, you cannot separate out today anymore electrical, mechanical controls and software from your work, right?
So what was,
So my
as you
career
were,
sort of just meandered, for
yeah.
lack of a better word.
No, it's really, it's common for all of us, the journey we take from what we imagine would be the highest expression of ourselves in a career as a kid and as a young adult and, as a graduate of university is often very different, than where we, depending on where we end up, right? And I just think that because you started in the electrical engineering field sooner, you had a general idea where you're going, but to have this level of specificity now when you talk about the validation and testing work that you're doing, it's really great that you've found a lane. Do you like what you're doing now? Are you passionate about this as it turns out?
I'm passionate about my field, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely,
good.
100%. Because if you take a look, this is pretty much what I've been doing. Electrical systems, electromechanical systems has
Right,
been the basis, right? Now, testing from being a person who is leading a testing organization, testing has always been integral, right? I cannot avoid testing if I want to launch any product.
right.
Over the year, when I brought technology to
Sure.
product in every company that I worked for, testing was a very integral part of it, right? And so for me, that I got into this was, as with many opportunities, it came by, and I said, sure, why not? And uh, here we are.
Yeah, good for you. Well, that's great background, and we all in this program we like to get to know you a little bit before we talk about the primary focus. But on this program, we look at leadership lessons, and here you are, a great technical kind of background and well prepared to do what you're doing in your field. But over the years, you've taken on more and more responsibility for managing operations, managing people. So I'd like you to tell us a story, set it up for us, give us a background, and could be a difficult situation or a big win, whatever happened. And we'd like to tease out the leadership lessons from that, if you'll allow us to. So yeah, waiting to hear what you would like to talk about today.
So the biggest epiphany as when I kind of stepped into becoming more of a people manager was that it's not about doing the work, but it's about getting the work done, right? And that epiphany really changed how I approached things, right? Because as you can imagine, being an engineer and an engineer's mindset, it's all, oh yeah, I can do it. What do you mean? Why is it taking you so long, right? I mean, it should be done a lot faster than that, right?
Mm.
But recognizing that, no, wait a minute, it's not about how I would do it, but it's how I make sure that the team gets it done. It sort of forced me to step back and rethink what that um, dynamic now needs to be. And over the years, I won't say that it was like that. Recognizing that people's motivations are different, right? Then how do I motivate a group of people with different sort of drivers, right?
Mm.
Being able to recognize what motivates the people and then helping sort of create an environment that allows them to succeed, obviously within the constraints of what the corporate elements are. Two then becomes is probably the biggest lesson was what I call empowering leadership, right? I was fortunate to have people early on in my career that were those kinds of leaders. I learned the term empowering leadership much later on, but my advisor in my grad school, I realized that he would never ask me to do something that he wasn't willing to do himself. Right?
Mhm. Always a good model to follow.
If he asked me to stay overnight and get something done, he would be in the lab with me.
Hmm.
My second one, when I was at Globe Motors, my boss was in terms of showing confidence to your team, right? Gives me a big project. This would have been a 30% growth in revenue if we succeeded, right? Drops a manila folder on my desk and says, don't mess it up. That's it, right? And go figure out, come to me if you have any questions, right? And what I realized later on is that that kind of motivated me to really, do my best at all times, right? And continuous challenge and drive. And he was there to guide or coach if I needed. And that became my sort of mantra, if you will, as a leader when I stepped into a leadership role, was that that's what I want to make sure that my team has a environment that they can flourish, a safe environment, um, to where they don't feel afraid of making a mistake or something going wrong, or being able to try different things and so on, right? Now,
Let me just interject there for a second because we've had other engineers on this program, and it's interesting that they talked, as part of what they talked about, this aspect because they were great operators, great technicians, great, um, people who created great results. But to really give that over to someone else to do, like your supervisor who dropped the folder on your desk and gave you that empowerment and that authority to act and was there to support you, but didn't, get in your shorts with you, so to speak, right?
yeah.
That's a skill from a leader because it's giving up a great deal of power and control and authority as well. So it's not something that's easy to do. You said that that's become your mantra is to empower others to do that because you knew it worked. And that's fantastic. But that's not an easy journey for someone like yourself to take when you're used to making it happen and you want to make sure everything's done exactly right. So was that an internal struggle for you as you kind of made that migration?
The struggle was not about giving up control, but the struggle was keeping my mouth shut when I saw them struggling. And I'll give you a true. This is a true story, right? So
Yeah.
as I was struggling, right, tendency to jump in and help out at every time. I had become a new father, right, and
Mm-hmm.
see my
Yep.
daughter. She just began to learn to walk, and we'd watch her walk and stumble and fall, and realize that I wouldn't jump up to pick her up every time she stumbled or fell, right? And I'd sit there and say like, oh, it's okay. And I realize it's exactly the same as what I need to do with the team, right? And I don't know if I can express it adequately, but that switch in my brain really transformed my thinking. And they're like, okay, it's fine. I know that I can do it if I need to. If I need to step in and drive it, I can. So I can watch if the mistakes are going to start getting to be too much. I can step in and guide. But once I got to that point where, okay, I didn't need to jump in, that actually made it easier. Um, I guess I was never bothered by the fact that somebody else was doing the work as long as the work was getting done. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I never really felt that somebody was diminishing me or I was getting reduced. Because the other thing that now since you brought it up, I'll tell you my three leadership mantras that I live by.
All right, great.
One is the person closer to the problem is closer to the solution.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the smartest man in the room, we are in big trouble. And my job is to make my job obsolete. And those were the three things that I always worked on. All my team members knew that, right? So and then trust is a given until you give me a reason not to trust you.
Mm-hmm. So that's the fourth.
Yeah. But that last part is not management specific. It's for me
Right.
in life.
Right. So the person closest to the problem is the person closest to the solution. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in trouble. And
The smartest person in the room that we
yeah,
are.
if you're as a leader, if you are, they're in trouble. And the third one was?
And my job is to make my job obsolete.
Yeah, so you're there to obsolete your job. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. I like that. I like that. So what that does is that makes you a very kind of servant leader, empowering leader in the organization. So what kind of relationships do you have as a result of that? What kind of relationships do you have with your team?
Normally pretty good, right?
Hmm.
What I found though is this is where I mentioned earlier, right? How do you motivate different people with different motivations, right?
Hmm.
There are some people who love this, right? Hey, here's what we need to get done, and they're off and running, right? And they'll come and give me updates. They'll come and talk to me if there's a problem. Then there are others who feel that maybe I'm too hands off and I'm not, you know, uh, guiding them, right? And then obviously there are some that probably need a lot more handholding.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, so there's some people who fail. They're just not capable of doing it on their own, unfortunately. Yeah. So they need more help.
And so the challenge became that in the beginning when it was just I'm maybe a manager or with a direct leadership over a small team, then to a director, then to a VP, and so on. The challenge becomes is that how do I then impart my tenets to
Hmm.
my direct line, who then have to propagate it down and so on, right? And so the challenge becomes is now if my next line reporting does not have the same beliefs that I do, then I have to sort of modify, tweak, adapt how I work with each one of them and subsequently their teams.
Yeah.
You're talking
So
about, good or bad, right? So I'll give you a
yeah,
bad. Uh,
yeah,
so I've always also believed in management by walking around, right? I mean, yes, I get reports from my direct reports, but I also do skip levels and I, walk and talk to everyone, right?
sure.
And what I found was, especially when the layers started increasing, right? Then when I'd come in and say something like this to the team, the core team in the group, I would mess up what their managers were trying to do,
Mm,
right? Because if what I just said, resonated with the engineers,
hmm.
they try to go, wait a minute, oh, I like that, and then so now suddenly their managers would find themselves to be in a bit of a quandary, right?
Right.
And so it was a challenge to try to figure out what that structure needs to be.
Yeah, because you can't be up to speed on every project and every aspect of every project every moment. Let me just let's explore this just a little deeper, but let me put a twist on it. Let's because I think this is a great concept of how you empower and delegate and run an operation efficiently. So in your space, We've got autonomous vehicles, which are, expanding all the time into new territories and new systems, new sensing systems, and new intelligence in vehicles, for example. You've also got, just the electric vehicle kind of journey, all the charging infrastructure that's going on there. So you've got a tremendous amount of what I'll call technology emergence in the arena where you're working. And I would expect in the testing arena, it's going to take a great deal of innovation as well. So you need to be continuously evolving and innovating with the technology that you're validating. And so when you have an organization that is highly empowered to do specific things, how do you make sure that you get the right mix of stability and continuity and consistency in your business while you're also getting the right amount of creativity and innovation and evolution that needs to happen for your company to be successful?
Ooh, that is actually a core question, right? I mean, in terms of what we do. So the simplest thing is you cannot be everything to everyone, right? So you have to put some, what do you want to call them? Rails on, blinders on, walls, what do you want to call it? But you have to start designing and developing a scope of what you are going to do, right? So let's say if I have a large company, right, I can create divisions that are focused on the different elements, right? So
Sure.
then you can have the focus and the depth both in terms of understanding the technology and developing the solutions for each. What you need for battery technology versus what you need for ADAS versus what you need for powertrain versus what you need for other systems are fundamentally different at its kind of nuts and bolts level, right?
Sure.
So you can't have one group covering all of it. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster in many ways. So if you have a large company, you can do this. Then you can start bringing in the cross-pollination at a higher level, right? So I said, oh, when we're doing battery testing, these are the things we learned. So I'm going to share this with the people doing powertrain testing, for example, right? Or I'm doing ADAS level testing. Here's what we learned. So I can test with the other people doing, let's say, ISO 26262 level testing, right? So you start creating these in Ingersoll Rand, they were called networks of excellence.
I was going to say centers of expertise of some sort, right? Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Where you cross-pollinate the knowledge, right?
Right.
But each team has its core focus.
Mm-hmm.
This has worked successfully. I've done this in a couple of different companies where we exchange interests on a regular basis, at least a quarterly basis. I've held engineering, sales, product group meetings. We just not just talk about the technical solutions, but now we say, okay, yeah, but when I go talk to a customer, here's the things that they talk about, right?
Right. Right.
And then so rather than just go based on a product data sheet by product data sheet, we have this free flowing information of what are the challenges that the salespeople face versus what are the challenges the engineers face, and it helps to facilitate the knowledge dissemination all the way from customer down to the development team. That's the best solution that I found so far. I'm sure that other people might have much better solutions.
Well, that's a good one. So what you're saying is because of the high degree of complexity and different elements of your business and your clients moving at different speeds with different levels of innovation, by segmenting or stratifying your teams across those technologies, you make them more expert in a particular field and more closely aligned with where the clients are moving, where the products and services and the technology is moving. So that makes a lot of sense. That does. So if you think about that in general, I mean, a question that I think affects all businesses, regardless of how technical, how complex, is how do you stay current? How do you keep up with the information flow and the technology and maybe what a competitor is doing? So, you have, I think this strategy of having all of the different divisions with a higher level of expertise and specificity makes a great deal of sense. So then within each of those and maybe across the whole enterprise, what do you do to stay current? How do you keep up with what's going on?
So within each group, I'm a big believer in that the engineers need to make sure that they attend technical conferences, for example, right? Participate, even if participated, even if you're not doing research to the extent that you're publishing, right?
Right.
Making sure that you can attend conferences is key. Now, honestly, I think since COVID, this has become in many ways a lot easier because webinars have become a very common thing. Whereas in the past, you had to go to physical conferences. And so,
Right.
you know,
Right.
time, budget, etc., would get in the
Mm-hmm.
way. But now with webinars, it's certainly helping
Right.
quite a bit. So that's one element, certainly, right?
Right.
I used to always make, if anybody went to any of these conferences, when they came back, they had to sort of report out to the rest of the team, right?
Right.
Did you learn, share it with the broader team, um, save anything that you have gathered into a common place so that, you try to exchange information.
Mm-hmm.
Now, recognizing that, people get caught up in their day jobs and it becomes really hard to do this stuff, we do things like specific time, like Fridays, for example, right? We do one place we used to do brown bag Fridays, right? So the team would get together, or maybe I'll splurge on pizza or something, but you
Right.
talk about things, right?
Yeah.
Done this more at some of the larger companies I worked at, but tech days, right? Where we could bring in vendors to come in and effectively host an engineering fair during the day where they would come and talk about their products and where they're going in the future, right? One place I worked at, we used to actually have an annual visit to core vendors who are providing different modules and technologies to talk about our roadmap, but also talk about their roadmap, so that we could collectively look at where things are going, that we could either take advantage of, or we would provide guidance to vendors to say that, hey, here's what we need from you. So different ways, right? Different ways to kind of try to keep current. No question about it, though. But I think with the information that has literally exploded in the recent times, it's an extremely tough proposition to keep up.
For all of us in all areas of expertise. So no, I appreciate that.
But I want to add one thing, Wayne, if I may.
Sure.
So remember I told you how we create these I hate
Divisions.
the word silos, but these specializations, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we've tried to do is to enable people who were kind of working in one, if they choose to want to work somewhere else, to allow for that as a career,
Okay.
so that
That's
we
important. Yeah.
pigeonhole anyone into just one, and they feel that, yeah, okay, I've learned enough about batteries, I want to go to powertrain, go for it, right?
Yeah.
Now we've tried to.
Yeah. It's cross-fertilization, so to speak. I mean, it's a great technique to use in any organization where you take people who might have a different perspective or a different level of experience and seed them into other parts of the organization strategically over time for their own personal development, but also for the benefit of the organization as a whole.
Absolutely. And because, as you know, right, I mean, I used to do this in many places that I've been invited to talk to students and young engineers, right?
Right.
When you come out of college, your career profile kind of looks like a T, right? You've got a lot of depth in one field and maybe a little bit of some other areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you progress, that becomes a pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to get depth in a second field, and
Mm-hmm.
your breadth is widening, right?
Mm-hmm.
You become like an M, but I say more like the monster symbol, right? You're starting to get depth in 3.
Mm-hmm.
You keep going, you become a wicket fence, right? You're starting to get a lot of depth in a lot of regions.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, once you get to a certain level, your role has shifted, right, from becoming the ability to manage a bunch of different things to what I call a banyan tree. Are you familiar with the banyan tree?
No, I'm not.
It's a tropical tree, but the core identifier for this is that the roots kind of hang down from the
So
branches.
kind of like a banyan tree.
Yeah, that's the banyan
Yeah,
tree.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I
But
thought you said valiant. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a banyan tree I am familiar with. My mistake.
So banyan tree, but it does one other
Yeah.
thing besides having a lot of depth in different
Yeah.
areas.
Right.
It provides shade.
Yeah.
So once you get to that level, your role is not just to be an expert who can manage different
Right.
things, but you're also providing the shade. You're providing an umbrella. You're providing a place for other, people to be able to come in and grow, to charge up, to improve, right? And
Yeah.
so that's the way I see a career progression, right? And that's what I've always tried to do. So as I become a
Great analogy. I love that. I mean, I think it takes an engineering mind to start with a T and go to a pi and then go to an M and then go to a banyan tree. My goodness. It's actually a very good way to think about it. Excellent, excellent work. So, as we begin to wrap up our conversation today, Uday, one of the things that I always do is ask my guests the same two questions. And the first one is, now that you've had all this experience, you've been down this road for 30 plus years, and you're where you are in life, what would you tell your younger self if you could go back and just give yourself a piece of advice?
I actually thought about this a little bit in because I saw your other podcast.
Sure, sure.
Um, yeah, I think I tell you, it's not all about work.
Mm,
It's probably the main thing that I would say, right? Now, I enjoyed work. I never felt that it was work, right? But I traveled like crazy.
mm,
I always thought that I made time for my family. I didn't miss any of my daughter's events until COVID hit. Then I realized, like, no, I probably didn't quite do as good a job as I thought I was doing. And so that's
mm,
the main thing I would say, that it's not all about work. Make sure that you really, really um, balance your life.
mhm,
I'll leave any viewer with this book that probably was my biggest guide. It's called Total Leadership by author Thomas Stuart Friedman. Sorry,
mhm,
Stuart Friedman. What he talks about, it's not work-life balance. It's work, family, society, and spirituality balance.
mhm. Yeah.
And that's the main message that I would tell my younger self is yes, work is fun, but other things are equally fun.
Well, I honor that response a great deal. I underachieved in having the right balance in my life, I'm sure, many times with the demands of the career that I had. I felt very blessed to have that career. I was with General Motors for a number of years, and they were good to me. I did my best for them, but it did often take a lot out of me, and it took me away from the family. And so now, as a part of what we can kind of address in our later years, when I do executive coaching, um, I have this construct where we don't just work on the professional side of who we are and what I call the value creation side of who we are, but we also work on how we're connected to the material world in general, how we're connected to our families and our friends, how we're connected to spirituality, and how we're connected to our own minds and bodies and taking better care of ourselves, which I
Absolutely.
think we all do bits and pieces of that, but I find that if you have a specific structure for that, and then you identify and design what the highest expression of yourself will be in each of those areas, you do a better job of balancing, as you said. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice to give your younger self. All right, let's fast forward. You and I are having a cocktail and talking about what we're most proud of in our life. What would that be for you? 20 years from now.
I I'd probably say that what I've done is an example to people. Maybe a good example, which I hope it's for most of them, but
Sure.
maybe
Yeah.
bad example, which is also fine, as long as an example they're able to take away a lesson from my life.
Mm.
That would probably be the most value that I would leave behind.
Yeah. That's really all we can hope for, right, is that we lived our lives with integrity, we lived our lives with purpose, and that through our expression, we were teaching and preaching in a way to those who saw us and those who we encountered in our life. So I think that's a great way to wrap this conversation up, Uday. Thank you so much for being with us today. I think it's especially interesting that you have this great depth in technical knowledge. And when I ask you to talk about the leadership lessons, you talked about the people issues and empowering others and learning to be a great leader, like the banyan tree you described. So I think that's good, thought provoking work for all of us to do. And I appreciate your being with us.
Likewise, Wayne, I mean, I certainly appreciate you having me on board and listening to me prattle on. So certainly an enjoyable experience, no question about that. And I wish you great success in this endeavor. I think this is a brilliant idea that you have in terms of getting people to come and share their experiences and leave it behind for others to learn from. So I think it's wonderful that how great a mechanism this is for you to give back, even your own experiences.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. I'm getting a lot of good feedback, and we're going to continue down this path because it seems to be resonating. So, all the best to you. God bless.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for being with us. If you like our conversations, please feel free to hit the subscribe and like buttons. And if you'd like to make comments, ask questions, or even explore being a guest on this program, you can reach out to us via email. It's wayne@greatroad.com. That's WAYNE at GR8ROAD.com. And until next time, always remember, the high road leads to a better place.